प्यारे पिता, तूने हमसे कितना प्यार किया, हमें पापों से छुड़ाने को अपने बेटे का कुर्बान किया। प्यारे पिता, तूने हमसे कितना प्यार किया, हमें पापों से छुड़ाने को अपने बेटे को कुर्बान किया। हम गाए हो सना, तू राजा तेरी महिमा होवे सदा। तू है प्रभु हमारा खुदा। हम गाए हो सना, तू राजा है राजा, तेरी महिमा होवे सदा। तू है प्रभु हमारा खुदा, तू है प्रभु हमारा खुदा।
Well, good morning. Man, it's great to be with all of you. It feels like it's been a long time since I've had the opportunity to get up here and share. So for those of you who receive our weekly e-news, I shared this last week a little bit about our experience in India. I was part of the team of 22 who left about 2 weeks ago. 18 hours in the air. Think about that, 18 hours in the air. That doesn't include time in the airports. And then 10 and a half time zones different, so 10 and a half hours ahead over there. And when we arrived in India, I said this first service, I had never been so tired in my life. And we had just had a baby, October 1st, so that was exciting. And I was tired from that already. I was just exhausted when we arrived in India. And by the time I got home, I was even more exhausted than I was the first time around. But that nonetheless, there was a word that I shared in the e-news article that I wrote this last week that described my whole experience. And it was a word that I heard often from members of the team, and it's the word uncomfortable. Uncomfortable. In fact, I'm curious, when is the last time you were uncomfortable? We don't like to be uncomfortable here in the United States. I don't like to be uncomfortable here in the United States. And I think sometimes we take for granted all of the comforts that we have here in the United States. In fact, I've kind of joked about there's nowhere you can go in the world and live like an American other than in America, unless you have all kinds of money and you want to spend all that money to be as comfortable as we are. But think about when you go to the grocery store and you look at the cereal aisle. I mean, my goodness, how many options of cereal do we have? And then there's the laundry detergent aisle, and there are the 50 different types that nobody else buys, right? Because you think to yourself, who buys that stuff? Or the toothpaste options. Think about all the toothpaste options, our cars, our climate control. If it's too hot, we turn the air conditioning on. If it's too cold, we turn the heat up. we have so many comforts that we don't even realize sometimes until we travel to another place, until you go somewhere like India where they don't have the comforts that we have. It's not quite as comfortable there. In fact, I've said this before, it's been a while, but if you make $32,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of wage earners in the world. If you make $32,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of wage earners in the world. And by the way, that is just under the poverty level here in the United States for a family of four. 34,000 roughly is the poverty level here in the United States. And so you just think about at our fingertips, we have all this ability to meet our comforts, to have life however we want it. And it's when you travel somewhere else that you realize there is a different world out there. And there's nothing wrong with comfort. I'm not like down on comfort or anything like that. It's not bad that we're Americans or that we get to experience everything we have here in the United States. But I think one of the things that God taught me during my experience in India is that sometimes it's in our discomfort that He wants to speak the loudest to us. And sometimes it's in our discomfort that He leads us to trust Him more and to rely on Him. And it's in our discomfort that He actually grows our faith. And so this morning, in just a couple minutes, we're going to invite some members from the team to share. But I just kind of want to lay a groundwork of talking about this whole concept of discomfort. Now, we're bringing this whole series, Living Upside Down in a Me First World, that we began at the beginning of September to a close. And then John did his little remix version as we learned about some of our mission partners and ways that we can be involved. But my guess is that throughout this series, maybe if you've been with us, there have been moments of discomfort because Jesus invited us into a bit of an uncomfortable followership of Him, right? I mean, He said things like, deny yourself, take up your cross, follow me. In other words, give up your life. I want you to give up your life if you're going to be my follower. He said such radical things as forgive others. And how many times do I forgive? Not one time, not two times, 77 times, which is basically you don't stop forgiving. You keep on forgiving just as I have forgiven you. And then the last time I was here, we shared about how to be great in God's kingdom by giving your life away, by becoming a servant of all. That's how greatness is measured in God's kingdom. And none of those are comfortable. And so as we kind of bring all this to a close, as we share about our experience in India, I just want you to be thinking about the idea of discomfort. In fact, there's a story I want to take a look at. If you've got your Bible, we're going to be in the book of Joshua. Now, Joshua's in the Old Testament, and if you didn't bring a Bible, we'll have it up here on the screen in just a minute. Joshua's at the beginning of the Old Testament. And Joshua tells the story of how the nation of Israel moved into its promised land. The nation of Israel started with a man, Abraham, who had a family that grew into a nation of people. They were enslaved by Egyptians at one point. Moses led them to freedom, crossed over the Red Sea, and then they wandered in the desert for 40 years. And just as they were getting ready to enter into this land God had promised them, Moses died and Joshua became the new leader of the nation. And so they're getting ready to enter into the promised land, but in order to do that, they have to cross over one more body of water. You may recall they crossed over the Red Sea. It parted for them. They walked through. And now they're faced with the Jordan River. And there's this place where in order to get into this land God has promised them, they have to go across this river. And so I want to just take a look at this story, especially as we talk about this whole concept of discomfort. So Joshua chapter 3, beginning in verse 5, Joshua told the people, he said, consecrate yourselves, which doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but essentially he was saying, I want you to wash your clothes, I want you to abstain from sexual activity, I want you to get your heart right, your mind right, I want you to focus on what's most important here. So consecrate yourselves, for tomorrow the Lord will do amazing things among you. I just love that because Joshua's kind of setting them up. He's like, guys, look, it's not going to be comfortable, but you're going to see God move. It's not going to be comfortable, but you're going to see God do amazing things that you'll look back at from this experience and you'll say to yourself, there's no way that could have happened unless God stepped in and did something about it. Now, if you've been with our church from the beginning of the year, we started the year off with a series called Invested, and the series was all about how to grow our faith, our confidence in God, our trust in who God is. And we said that one of the ways that God grows our faith is through what we call pivotal circumstances. Those are those circumstances where we are no longer in control. We're no longer in control of our comfort. We're no longer in control of the outcome. We're no longer in control of what in the world is going to happen here. And it's in those places that God steps in and does His greatest work. among us. And so Joshua's preparing the people. He's like, guys, get ready. God's going to do, I love that word, amazing. He's going to do amazing things. Verse 6, Joshua said to the priests, take up the Ark of the Covenant and pass on ahead of the people. So they took it up and they went ahead of them. Now, the Ark of the Covenant, if you've seen Indiana Jones, you probably know what that is. It's this big box that the Ten Commandments were placed in, and it was believed that God would come and meet with the Israelites at the Ark. Now, the Israelites didn't worship a God that was a statue. They didn't worship a God who lived in a temple. They worshiped a mobile God, and he would come and he would meet with the Israelites on the ark. And so it was this sacred thing that was so sacred, people weren't even allowed to touch it. There were poles that were underneath it, and the priests would carry the ark on their poles. So Joshua says, take the ark, go on ahead. Verse 7, and the Lord said to Joshua, today I will begin to exalt you in the eyes of all Israel, so that they may know that I am with you as I was with Moses. In other words, Joshua is going to lead the people now. God wants them to know. Verse 8, tell the priests who carry the Ark of the Covenant, when you reach the edge of the Jordan's waters, go and stand in the river. Now, how's that for a strange instruction, right? I mean, when you get up to the water, guys, what I want you to do is just go ahead and step into the river right there. I don't know if you've ever seen a river before. The Jordan River during most of the year was 100 feet wide, 3 to 10 feet deep. But this wasn't most of the year. This was actually the flood season, as we're going to find out here in just a minute. So you think about the Ohio River at flood stage. You're carrying the sacred relic, or sacred ark on your shoulders, and Joshua gives you these instructions. Hey, when you get to the water's edge, just go ahead and step out onto the water. I want all of you to get in there. Now, what would your response be? I'm thinking, nah, not me. This is dangerous. You want me to... In fact, there's a story, if you fast forward the history of Israel, where David is the king, and the ark is going to tip over, and a guy reaches out to touch it to just make it steady, and God kills him on the spot because he wants people to know, hey, I'm holy. I want you to know that I'm holy. And so in these moments, I can't imagine what the priests are thinking. You want me to do what? You want me to step into this river? It's like, yeah. I want you to do something uncomfortable. I'm not promising you an easy path. I'm not promising you an easy path, but what I want you to do is take a step of faith. And so verse 9, it says, Joshua said to the Israelites, come here and listen to the words of the Lord your God. He said, this is how you will know that the living God is among you. This is how you're going to know. Because the Israelites were about to enter into a land that was already occupied by a lot of people, and they weren't going to be real happy about the Israelites coming in. And the Israelites would begin wondering, has God abandoned us? Why in the world did he bring us here? Is he going to help us? Is he going to be with us? Is he going to guide us and help us? Is God aware? Does he care? Does he know? And Joshua says in those moments, I want you to look back at this moment, because this is how you're going to know that God is faithful. This is how you're going to know that the living God is among you. Skipping ahead to verse 13, he says, as soon as the priests who carry the ark of the Lord of all the earth, set foot in the Jordan, this is how you're going to know God's among you, its waters flowing downstream will be cut off and stand up in a heap. But it will come after you take a step of faith. It will come in the moment when you put your feet in the water. And so, guys, I want you to take a step of trust. I want you to be out of control of the situation. I want you to trust me. Now, it's really important to note here that Joshua didn't just decide to do this. God led him to do this. So sometimes people want to say, well, I'm going to trust God and jump off this cliff and see if he'll catch me. That's not trust, that's stupidity, okay? That's not what was happening here. Joshua was following God's leading and doing exactly as God said and leading the people to do exactly as God said, and it was an act of trust and faith. And when God leads us and when we're uncomfortable, it's a moment in time where he wants to stretch us and he wants to grow us and he wants to teach us, hey, this is how you'll know. This is how you'll know that I'm among you. This is how you'll know. Verse 14, so when the people broke camp to cross the Jordan, the priests carrying the Ark of the Covenant went ahead of them. Now the Jordan is at flood stage all during harvest, and this is Joshua retelling the story for us. Again, flood stage means this is dangerous. I mean, this is risky. This is terrifying. These guys, they were risking their lives because the flood stage. Yet, as soon as the priests who carried the ark reached the Jordan and their feet touched the water's edge, as soon as that happened, the water from upstream stopped flowing. In that moment that they put their feet in the water, God stopped it. But it required a step of faith. It required being uncomfortable. It required trust. He continues on. He says, it piled up in a heap a great distance away at a town called Adam in the vicinity of Zarethan, while the water flowing down to the Sea of Arabah, that's the Dead Sea, was completely cut off. So the people crossed over opposite Jericho. The priests who carried the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord stopped in the middle of the Jordan and stood on dry ground. Now think about that, because that's another piece of this miracle, this part of the amazing things that God did. You know, when water dissipates, it's muddy for a while, right? But this wasn't muddy ground that they stood on. It was dry ground while all Israel passed by until the whole nation had completed the crossing on dry ground. Isn't that a great story? Isn't that a great account? Man, you know, 15 years ago or so is when I first read this, and it struck me. There are times when you read through the Bible and it just strikes you, and this is one of those times. And the reason why it struck me is because I believe God wants to grow our faith. He wants to grow my faith. He wants you to grow your faith. He wants us to trust him in significant, radical ways. But my friends, I'm telling you, as long as we are comfortable, we miss the opportunity for God to grow us. Because it's in our discomfort that we are required to trust him and to rely on him and recognize that if God doesn't step in, this is going to be a problem. If God doesn't step in, but it's then that we see the amazing things that he has in store for us. You know, every night on our trip, I was there for about 5 days. Every night while we were there, we had this time of debrief where the leader of Back to Back, his name was Casey, would ask us about our day, and we'd talk through it. And there was one young lady from our group, Michelle, who's sitting up here in the second row, but Michelle said this thing that we were all feeling about discomfort. And it was a day that we had been out in the afternoon playing with kids and just building relationships with them. And she talked about her picture of the day being the moment in time where her joy overcame her discomfort. It was such a beautiful thing, and it's so true for every one of us. There is a point in time where God brings us joy to overcome that discomfort, and it's in that place, I'm telling you, that we get to meet him, and we see him, and he moves through us. So with that kind of as a backdrop, there are 4 people from our team that I've invited to come join me on stage. If you all want to kind of come up here. I wish we could bring all 22 on stage, but I don't think we'd even get through one question to have everybody answer. So come on up, guys. I'd love to have you join me up here. While they're coming up, I just want to say this too. If you know somebody who went on the trip, please stop them and have a conversation. Don't ask them how the trip was, because that's a really bad question. You know, it's hard to answer that. How was your trip? Kelby, tell me. Oh, no, I'm just kidding. Yeah, exactly. How long you got? But ask them questions about their experience and what they experienced on there. But as we begin, I'd love for you just to kind of each go down the line. You're in the same order as you were in Greensburg. That'll be helpful. Was it? Okay, good work. Hey, nice job, team. Introduce yourself. Tell us which campus you're from, and then we'll kind of go from there.
My name is Kelby Owens. I'm from the Greensburg campus.
And I'm Kim Bender, here from Batesville.
I'm Sarah Odell from the Greensburg campus.
And Greg Enneking from the Greensburg campus.
Now, as I mentioned, when every night we had this kind of debrief time, and Casey, what he would do is he would walk through the day, and he would tell us to close our eyes, which proved to be problematic after we were still dealing with jet lag, and Greg confessed falling asleep a couple times. I think Greg was the only honest person, because I think the rest of us dealt with that. But and he would walk through the day, and he would ask us about a picture of the day, the kind of the most significant thing that happened to us each day. But Greg, I wonder if you could just give a real brief overview of the week so that people here can have an understanding of what our experience was like overall.
Okay, so I'll start with when we landed in Hyderabad, because that was definitely a moment of discomfort for, or an uncomfortable time for me, and I think a lot of the group. It took us about an hour and a half to get through Hyderabad. airport through all the security, the customs, to retrieve our baggage and everything. And then we got through all of that, and we went down, and Casey and Sam were there from back to back. We loaded up on the bus, and we headed for our hotel room. And it was probably about 4 o'clock or so in the morning, dark, and we're going in the bus through Hyderabad. We get to the hotel, get about 5 hours of sleep, get up the next morning, and we have kind of a get to know the back-to-back group, and also to learn a little bit about Hyderabad. Then in the afternoon, we went to Christ for All mission in the slums of Hyderabad. And we split into 2 groups there. Some stayed at the campus. One group stayed at the campus. The other went to where they feed the kids every day. After that, we went back to the hotel, got a good night's rest, got up the next day, and we had a class. And we had to go through 3 classes to understand the kids and what back-to-back's doing before we could even meet the kids. So this was the first one. We did that. Then we went out and got to go shopping and spent the afternoon shopping. Had a great time in the bazaar. We loaded up afterwards and went to the campus. And the campus is about 3 hours from Hyderabad. And I have no idea how far that is in miles because of the Indian traffic there. But it could have been 50 miles, it could have been 150 miles, I don't know. But it took us about 3 hours to get there. When we got there, it was night and dark, and they let us in. The kids greeted us. We unloaded, got to bed, got up the next day, took classes, the other 2 classes that we had to take before we met the kids. And one thing I want to say is there were 4 things that we did every day there. In the morning, first thing, you had a half hour of quiet time. You could reflect, you could journal, you could pray and so forth, but it was time just to yourself and the Lord. And then in the morning, we would also break into small groups. So we had broken up into groups of 4, and you stayed with that group through the entire week, and you would just share what was going on and what was happening during that time. And that was just a real special time. And then at night, we would have, as Seth said, the debriefing that Casey and Rhonda from Back to Back led, and we would all go around and talk about the picture that for us for the day. And then after that, we would break into our group, the team group of 22, and discuss some more things for a little bit. So we did that every day, and that was really important, I believe. But back to what happened on a daily basis, and I lost where I was in that when I broke in.
We were on Saturday. We talked about the training, and then
then Saturday after the training, and we had a tour of the campus and everything. Then in the afternoon, we got to have time with the kids, structured play time. And it was quite long and quite rigorous, and but it was just an excellent time. And then on Sunday, of course, we had Sunday service, which was just so meaningfully to me to be worshiping with folks from another culture, and how that looked and what that meant. Then in the afternoon, we had a structured time with the kids where it was kind of to get to know them, to learn their names and them learn ours. And they did a much better job learning our names than we did theirs. But it was just a great time, and the back-to-back staff had games set up for us to do that in, to learn that. It was really, really good. And then we took a break, and then after that we had more recreational time with the kids on Sunday. On Monday, they went back to school, and so we sent them off to school, and then we had our work details, and on Monday, it was, we broke into 2 camps and did painting in the children's homes, 3 of the different children's homes. Then on Tuesday, we went and finished the painting. 2 groups finished the painting. One group went to another orphanage to go and do dental work there and be with the orphans there. And then still another group did the outside, an outside project in the heat and the sun and the humidity. So that's how our Tuesday went. And as everybody, as life here happened and things unexpected come up, things unexpected came up there as we were leaving, and I think God just reminded us that, you know, I'm going before you, but you may not know everything that's going to happen. And so it was unexpected, but everything went well. We got to the airport on time. We were able to get our flight out, and then, as Seth said, a long flight home.
That's right, good. So I would love to hear from each of you about just kind of a picture of a week or a theme of the week for you as you reflect back on your time.
Mine was more of a theme of the week. You mentioned joy earlier, and I think that was kind of the theme that I just noticed and felt throughout the week. You know, being able to worship with the kids, spending time with them, seeing their smiles, laughing at us when we're dancing. It was almost like a Zumba session they put us through. I've never been to a Zumba, but I'm just assuming what it's like.
They had a lot of energy.
Yeah. And then we taught them some songs, and it was a lot of fun, and the joy in everybody's eyes. And watching Greg, the eldest of our group, volunteer to get up in front of everybody to dance, and watching try to keep the beat. It was just a lot of fun. It brought me a lot of joy. So that was just the theme of the week for me. It was just seeing the joy, and that's something that I struggle with, is finding pure joy. I feel like I'm happy, but I don't necessarily, because I'm so distracted with life and work and the kids and everything. So all those distractions were removed. So
Good. Kim, how about for you?
For me, I'm kind of a theme of the week, but I think so often in my life, I find myself not getting involved because I don't feel like I'm prepared. I want to be completely prepared before I go set myself into a situation, because I don't know if I want to look good, I don't know what it is, but I just want to be prepared. And there were so many times in this week that we really didn't even know what we were doing next. And through each of those experiences, God showed himself faithful, and he provided for us whatever we needed. And it was just very rewarding to see that when we step out, God's there, and he will be faithful.
Mine's similar to Kelby's. Just seeing the smiles on their faces every day, the joy that they had, brought joy to us. It was very contagious, so that was a neat thing. And just how our team worked together, that was really cool to see, how we just came together, worked together, did whatever they asked us to do. And when it was time to play and we were exhausted, it was neat to see how God provided and gave us energy and strength to play with those kids and just have a blast.
Yeah, I think one of mine was the back-to-back staff, because as Seth was talking about, I like to be comfortable, and I like to participate as long as I'm comfortable. And the back-to-back staff is just so all in for the kids. It's that's their life. That's what they do, and it has to be uncomfortable, just taking care of those kids and putting their needs ahead of their own. And that was just one thing I really learned from them is what that kind of service looks like.
Good. One of the pieces of being uncomfortable when you travel to another culture is just the culture shock of being in a different place. And so I'm curious, what shocked you most with the cultural differences?
I think being the minority was big, because I've never experienced that before. Being only white-skinned people coming off the airplane in India, and seeing guards with automatic rifles. That was very uncomfortable, and that was something I never experienced before.
I would have to say that when we got out of the airport and were traveling to the next location, it was after dark when we were there, and I was struck. I mean, it was like, I think you said 4, maybe 3:30 in the morning, and I was struck by the fact that there were people just milling about on the streets at that hour, and that was just odd. I felt like, what are these people possibly doing at this hour of the day? But we didn't realize just how I guess it was a lull in their traffic at that time. It was slower, not so busy as when we saw it during the day, and oh my, quite a difference.
I would say the smells, very, very, very strong smells when you get off the airplane into the airport, and then the hotel, and I think it's mostly the food. And then the traffic, very chaotic. It was crazy. And I'd say the staring. They tend to stare because they don't see a lot of white-skinned people, and then they want to take pictures with you. So they come up to you and ask you, "Can I get a picture with you?" So that was very odd and uncomfortable.
Yeah, I had a couple, in the States here, like we stand in lines, and I'd never thought of that before, but we're standing in line at Walmart, or we stand in line everywhere we go waiting, and over there they don't stand in lines. They just mill around, and so here we wait our turn and everything. There they're just milling around, and if there's a little space there, they just walk right in front of you. And that just struck me as so rude in the beginning, and then after a while, I realized they do that with everybody, not just me or our group. That's just the custom there, and nobody worries about it. And we were, I think, in the airport, and we were kind of waiting for people to go, and then we were getting ready to go, and then people just slip right in front of us, and we're kind of just standing around. And Nate came up and he says, "If you wait for everybody to go by, you are not going to go anywhere." And he says, "You want me to take the lead?" And we let him take the lead, and he understood it, and he just went on through. The other thing that happened that really kind of hit me is we after we were shopping at the bazaar and we were getting ready to leave, we're standing on the sidewalk there, and this guy comes by on a motorcycle, and he gets clipped in the middle of a 3-lane highway, and goes down, and immediately there's like 25 or 30 people just surround him. I mean, they just dropped their bike, they just surrounded him, and they stayed there the whole time while he was down, and the traffic just parted. It just went around him and just parted. And when he finally, I think he was knocked out, but when he finally came to and he drug his bike off to the curb, they just all got on their bikes and took off again. But I just thought that was just something, how they were around him to protect him from the traffic and to have the traffic go around him.
There were two pieces. One I just thought about is Kim, you were describing on the bus, I think, driving on the streets, seeing all the shrines along the side of the road, the Hindu shrines. I think we take for granted that we live in a Christianized nation, but India is less than 10% Christian. And so seeing that was a little bit uncomfortable. Another piece for me was when we got ready to go into the bazaar. I arrived there a little bit early. I rode in a car with another person from our team, and so we got there before the bus did, and there were two little girls who were begging outside of the front of the bazaar, and they were tenacious little beggars, and came up and back to back had told us, don't give money out. You don't know who they're working for or where the money's going to go. And so but there's still this sense of a little girl with crossed eyes, another one whose feet weren't quite right, and coming up and poking you and holding their hands out and following you even after you say no, and just continuing to come. And thinking, man, I'm about to go into this market and spend a bunch of money on my own perfectly healthy kids back home, and there's a sense where you want to do something and yet you can't. And I don't know, it was unsettling for me. That was the most awkward culture shock, I think, from my point of view. So one of the things we learned early on is that Indians have a bit of a bobble to the way that they talk. And I don't know if anybody wants to share about the head bobbling as culture shockish and what exactly it meant. And
Okay, but you have to show the bobble.
yeah.
You have to do it.
Like right now?
Yeah. Okay, so we don't know what that meant. We saw a lot of it. So we kept asking people, what does that mean? What are they telling us? Because you ask them a question and they do this bobblehead thing. I remember at breakfast at the hotel, I asked for an omelet, and she just gave me the bobblehead. And I'm like, what? Yes, I can have one? I didn't know what that meant. But we realized that Casey and Rhonda always said when they did that, she would always say yes, and then they would say yes or no. Most of the time it meant yes. But so I always just made sure I said yes, because I wanted them to say yes or no, because I didn't want to do something they didn't want me to do. So yeah, that's what, I don't know. I don't know if you wanted to tell your story.
One of the things that they asked us to do whenever we were wanting to take a picture of the kids was to ask permission. Can I take your picture? And so at the first place we were at the CFA, I had a little girl and I was like, oh, can I take your picture? I'm like, okay, what does that mean? And pretty soon she's calling over a couple other kids, and so I'm like, oh, can I take your, I'm like, oh, I guess this means yes, because they're all gathering.
I was told 90% of the time it means yes. Yeah. So what about the traffic? Somebody tell us about the traffic and the roads, what that was like, because that was an experience.
Well, when we left the airport the first night, and I was on a window seat in the bus, and I'm looking out and I'm going, oh my gosh, we'll never get there. There's no possible way we'll get there because, I mean, as I said, they don't stay in line. They just cut in front. And the biggest thing that hit me, the horns blew incessantly. I mean, you just can't even imagine. And I finally asked Sam, I said, how do you not have road rage here with everybody blowing their horns like that? And he said, well, it's not like in the States. He said, all they're doing is saying, hey, I'm coming up beside you. And then like if they're gonna pass you, like if they're gonna literally cut in front of you, they'll honk the horn again, and go in front of you. But the horns just blew incessantly. And then the motorbikes, I mean, they were like 250 or 350 cc's. And you'd look, I'd look down like this and I'd say, well, there's two guys on there, no big deal. The next one come by, oh, well, there's three guys on that one. And then there'd be two guys and a lady on one, and she's sitting side saddle on it going by. And then the one, though, you mothers are going to love this. The father'd be riding on it, and then he'd have like a 2 to 5 year old on the gas tank sitting in front of him. And then the mother would be behind them, and they'd have like a 5 to 8 year old in between the two of them. So there'd be 4 of them on that motorbike, and they're just going like crazy. And I mean, literally, you look out, and you're not 6 inches from them, and you look across the other side, and there's a car there, and it's not 6 inches from them. They're just going on like it's nobody's business.
There was one where the lady was holding a baby. So there were 5 people on one little motorbike. Yeah, that was interesting. So I think, God taught all of us some incredible things. Kelby, I'd love to hear, just kind of go down the row and start with you about what God taught you. I heard Liz wanted you to go on the trip, your wife Liz, and encouraged you to go. So tell us a little bit about kind of where you feel like God spoke to you.
So my wife has been on mission trips. She's done Emmaus. She's went to summer camp as a kid, and so she's had some experiences like this, and I have not. And so she knew what was coming. She knew what was ahead of me, and she was excited for me to go, because she originally was going to go, and then some circumstances came up. She didn't end up going, but she was just happy and excited for me to have this experience. And one thing that, I'm going to go off a little cuff here.
Go for it.
One thing that I didn't do last time, I thought I'd do, is read a part of my journal, because as we talked last time, journaling was like something I was just like very against. When Sarah gave us these journals, I was like, no way, I'm not journaling. But day one, I picked up my journal, went upstairs, and just went at it. So, you ask about like what experience I had, and I think I'd be able to, if I read it, it'd be better than saying it. All right, so my day 2 journal says, before leaving for this trip, several times I wondered what the purpose was for me to leave behind my family and fly halfway around the world to spend 4 to 5 days in an orphanage. Don't they need financial support more than they need our bodies over there for a short-term trip? What can really be accomplished in that amount of time? What kind of impact can we really make? Or is this trip more about making a lasting impact on my journey with Jesus? I wasn't sure. Then we got limited amounts of sleep, made a significant time zone change, and arrived. On day 1, I had a more clear picture. In my exhaustion, I was able to put aside all which typically fills my head and distracts me. I took an unexpected walk through the slums where people were living in structures made of tarps, metal roofs, trash everywhere, down a narrow, muddy trail. But you know what? People seemed happy. They smiled at us and said namaste. They seemed mostly happy to see us. Nobody seemed jealous, angry, frustrated by us Westerners walking through their camp. At first I was a little nervous, but soon I saw a little boy smiling at us, followed by many others of all ages. After walking through the poorest conditions I have seen personally, we arrived at Christ for All's alternate location and walked into a room of approximately 60 to 70 kids smiling at us, genuinely happy to see us. And I kind of went on to share kind of what that experience was like. But then I said, what an eye-opener day 1 turned out to be. These kids live in poor situations, however, they seem very happy. Man, do we take things for granted. I thank God that organizations like the Back to Back and CFA exist, and kind of just went on a little bit more. But, what a difference these people make in these kids' lives. And, that really hit home with me, and really think about what we have and what we experience here, and really, in our uncomfortable experience, how we need to rely on God in those things.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Kim, you had an experience when we arrived at the Children's Hope Center. We've got the banner over there. Barry, could you help me pull it out? It's right on the speaker there.
I was just going to say, I don't have that prop.
We've got
this
the
time.
prop right here for you. Yeah, we'll bring that out front if you would. Yeah.
So everyone can see there, when we arrived at the Back to Back campus, the orphanage that we were going to be spending the rest of our time at, it was after dark, and we arrived, and there the headlights kind of shone on this banner, and it was incredible. They had each one of us, our names on there, and it was just moving. I know a lot of people took pictures, me included. It was just neat to see that how much they were excited about having us come. But that was just the beginning, because to me the most meaningful part was when they opened the gates and inside were all the children. It's after dark. And they were all lined up, just ready to greet us. They had flower garlands to put around our necks, and they were just so excited. They sang some beautiful songs for us, and inside of me, I was just like, why are they doing this? We haven't even done anything for them yet. I don't deserve this special treatment as I come in, And it just gave me a picture of our Heavenly Father, and that is exactly how He sees me. I don't have to do anything. He just loves me that deeply.
Thanks. Sarah?
So my time there as I journaled, which I don't do very often either, but I'm glad that they made us do this, kept coming up, just be present. Like every day I would keep writing the same theme, be present. So I just think in the world that we live in here, we fill our time. We're busy, we're on the go. We don't slow down very much. So I think being over there, we had to slow down. We were uncomfortable to begin with, out of our comfort zone, not in our own little bubble of the world over here. So I had to slow down, take time to write my thoughts down and process everything. And being uncomfortable, I think you rely on God way more because you can't do it on your own. So it was a time to draw closer to Him and to rely on Him more than I ever have before.
Yeah, I think several things that touched me was because when I started this, I was looking to see how God works and how God goes before us and prepares the way, and I really wanted to know what that looked like. And as Sarah says, we're so busy over here so often, we don't really have maybe the eyes to see and the ears to hear because we're looking at so many other things and so many other things distract us. And what amazed me was how God put together this team and how He oversaw that. I mean, you think there were 22 of us, and for all 22 to be able to go, that over the year, nothing came up, no health issues, no spousal issues, no kid issues, no work issues. I mean, all the things that could have come up and say, I have to drop out. Nobody dropped out. And I just so believe that that's because God orchestrated this group and had a purpose for this group. And then how you all came together, because we're such a diverse group, We had a teenager there, we had an oldster like me, we had some close to being oldsters, we had couples that went, we had single moms that went, we had a father-daughter that went, and just different scenarios and different people in different areas of their life, the Batesville campus and the Greensburg campus, and it was so neat to get to know folks from this campus and where your hearts are. It was just so special, but then how you all were the ones, you weren't there, but you were so much a part of this trip because the currency you expended in this trip, and I don't mean just the financial currency, that was great, but the prayers that went ahead, and not just the prayers when we left. I truly believe that the prayers that went on for a year from both campuses to prepare for this trip, God had to have heard that and been pleased with that. For all that, spouses that were left behind with the kids, and gave permission for the other to go. and took on that burden, for the staff that stayed behind, because a lot of the staff of both campuses were gone, and the extra work they had to put into it, the extended families and all the things that you all did to help sustain the ones that were here. It was just amazing to me, and I just want to thank you all from me, and especially from the whole team, because I know it meant so much to the whole team, and we just saw God's presence and His work in all of this. And I think we're going to just see great things from this. So thank you all.
Yeah, thank you. Thank these guys. So one last quick question. I know we're kind of running over. We're almost done, I promise. If these guys have an opportunity to travel sometime or be involved locally, what would you say? You can just give a nod, preferably not a bobble, because we don't know what that means. But would you recommend that they say yes to opportunities to get uncomfortable and see God's presence? Yeah. So as we end today, I just want to ask you this question. Is there an area of your life where you need to get uncomfortable and allow God to grow your faith? And what is that area? Maybe it's a conversation that you need to have that you've been holding off having because it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's an area to serve that God's leading you to do, but you've said no because it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's joining a community group because that's uncomfortable, or giving financially because that's uncomfortable, or something at work. I don't know, but where is God inviting you to be uncomfortable? And are you willing to take a step and say yes to Him and allow Him to move in your discomfort and allow Him to grow your faith? So I'm going to leave you with that. Let me just pray for us as we close our time together. God, I just thank you so much for the experience that so many of us had over the last couple of weeks. I thank you for the prayers, the financial giving, the love and support we've received from our congregation here and in Greensburg, and from family, and as Greg said, friends who have just been caring for us and for our families while we were gone. Lord, thank you for the invitation to be a little bit uncomfortable. And in our world where, everything's at the touch of a button or, swipe of a credit card, and we can have whatever comforts we want, God, give us the courage to take a step into unknown waters where you lead us, and let us experience your faithfulness. So we thank you for this time. We pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.